on demand as well. So also, this is an interactive forum, so we encourage you to hop on camera and ask questions that you have along the way. If you'd like to ask a question, you can go ahead and just jump right into the conversation. Or if you'd like to use the raise hand feature or the Q&A feature in Zoom, that's fine, and we'll answer in real time as well. So again, this is a conversational virtual event. Our discussion will be much more valuable with questions and interactions from the audience. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest speakers. So first on the call, we have Chime Nell. He's a senior SAP project planning manager at Puget Sound. And with over 24 years of experience in the ecosystem, Chime is a well-seasoned professional and has deep industry knowledge around full lifecycle implementations, and has a very excellent track record of projects staying within budget, on time, and within scope. So thank you for joining us today, Chime.
Thank you very much, Megan.
Awesome. And then we also have Brenda Reyes. So residing in Winter Park, Colorado, one of my favorite places, by the way, Brenda's focus is on key customers and delivery. With over 10 years of experience in HR process design and technology implementation, she serves as an account and delivery executive for global clients and has full responsibilities for technology projects up to $6 million in budget. So thank you, Brenda, for joining the conversation today.
I appreciate the invite. Thanks, Megan.
Awesome. And like I mentioned, we also have something exciting for the end customers on the call today. So the Rising team has graciously offered a value assessment where their team will host a one-day workshop with you to review your current install and provide some of their guidance and expertise and process recommendations based on those findings. So basically a mini system health check for your organization. And so the end customer will be chosen at random by myself at the end of the session. So really cool. Thank you, Rising team. And must be present to win. So stay on the call and we'll draw an end customer at the end of our time together. Again, thank you, Rising team. And the third person I'd like to introduce is Lauren Reinhardt. As co-founder and COO of Ascensource, Lauren is dedicated to driving strategic growth for Ascensource partners, SAP customers, prospects, and also SAP. So Lauren will be today's session moderator and facilitator of the discussion between our event speakers and the attendees as well. Awesome. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thanks so much, Megan. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Chime, for joining us today in our first official event for Real Customers of SAP. And thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Before we get started, for those of you who may not be familiar with Puget, I wanted to kind of share a little bit about them. They are an energy utility headquartered in Bellevue, Washington, and serve the Puget Sound region with electric power and natural gas for more than 1.1 million customers with electric and over 750,000 with natural gas, and have a service area spanning 6,000 square miles. With over 3,000 employees. So just a little background. I know we've got some other utility companies on the line, so wanted to share a little bit about them. And again, as Megan said, this is aimed to be interactive. Everyone who's joined, you've been promoted to panelists. We encourage you to go ahead and throw on your camera if you're in a space to do that. I've got some questions to kind of kick off the discussion, but certainly don't hold them till the end. We want to have plenty of time to get the questions answered. This is really your time. So to kick off today's discussion, I want to touch on the why and what pain points, Chime, you guys had or desires for capabilities that led you to evaluate technologies to support and ultimately lead your selection of SAP SuccessFactors. So why did you guys select SuccessFactors, and what was the goal of the project and the implementation?
Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, we started our implementation in SuccessFactors in early 2018, but about 2 years before that, we've already recognized that we're running into our processes were not working very well within HR, and the processes we wanted to define in HR was not working well in our software, in the HCM environment, because we had at that point the HR, SAP, HCM on-premise. We also found our reporting was not up to scratch at a level that we needed for our regulators. We also found if some of our interfaces wasn't working. It was a huge and a manual process at times in this old SAP environment. Also, at that time, the news came that they're going to sunset the e-recruiting in SAP and some of the SAP modules in 2020. That was now extended to 2025. But by that time, we already made that decision to move forward to a SuccessFactor, a more advanced HR system.
Great. And what modules are you using of SuccessFactors? Are you using the full suite, or did you start with certain modules and kind of build from there?
It's quite a group of modules. We have the Employee Central, we've got e-recruiting, onboarding. Then we also have the Sodalas. We added Sodalas with our SuccessFactor. We also, and I need to at times have to quickly browse through to remind myself just all the modules we did. Let's get to that.
In that first phase of work, Chime, in addition to the Sodalis applications, which are an extension of SuccessFactors for job bidding, which offers some very specific functionalities for evaluating your union employees and deciding who's going to be able to advance on for that next promotion. The Puget Sound Energy implemented the full talent suite in the second phase of work, right? So that performance and goals, succession, career development planning, as well as compensation and variable pay. And actually, even in that first phase of work, we also designed a pretty major integration for documentation moving over to PeopleDoc, another third-party solution.
And then also
so for Chime and team, it was pretty extensive.
Yeah, and the workforce analytics.
Yep, that's right.
Awesome. No, thank you for that. I think that helps kind of provide some context. So when you were going down this path and realized that you needed to implement a new HR solution because your existing system wasn't meeting the needs of the business, what considerations specific to Puget did you guys have to take into consideration during that evaluation process?
For the software or for the vendor?
For the software. The vendor is my next question.
Well, the software is very easy because we are already a SAP house. That was our biggest determination. We evaluated Cornerstone, we evaluated Workday, but at the end of the day, we found that the SuccessFactor software was giving us the best value for our money. And we also had a very strong relationship with SAP that we wanted to continue with and knew we were going to get the support we want. And like I said, our house is already SAP, so we wanted to continue in that direction.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Sorry, Lauren. Yeah, one of the things that I think was just really interesting and sets the bar really high that I saw at Puget Sound Energy was the way they went into their visioning process. What were they expecting from their future HRIS solution, and why? And so, Chime, I'm thinking about the kind of the whiteboard, diagrams that were written up, kind of explaining the vision to the project team. And Puget Sound Energy, even before going through the RFP cycle, right? They pulled the team together. They wanted to explore what were the pain points, what was an ideal future state for the system, and what are we driving toward, and what do we need to make our decisions based on. And resoundingly, Chime, I think your team, everybody agreed that it was all around the user experience, and it was really focused on how can we best serve employees, make sure they're at the center of this transformation.
Yeah, it
And
was
so-
all about self-service.
And
that was one of the main goals, really, to get our company being much more self-service.
yeah, exactly.
Not HR driving everything.
Yep. And so the SuccessFactors tool and all of the robust functionality, that's offered there was a great fit for Puget Sound Energy, and kind of helping them achieve those goals of making sure employees and managers and HR, could act through mobile, online, or if they were in a browser, but just really giving them those capabilities they were looking for.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And so, obviously any part of a project is the implementation partner. And obviously you guys have a great relationship. So Chime, I'm curious kind of when you guys engaged with Rising, were they, were they an existing partner that you had worked with? Or did you bring them in after you had selected SuccessFactors? I'm just curious kind of what decisions went into, much like you did for choosing SuccessFactors, of the 22,000 SAP partners, a whole slew of them who can implement, why Rising?
Well, the Rising was basically suggested by SAP also as a niche company for HR implementations, and especially around SuccessFactor. We evaluated quite a few vendors. There was Deloitte, I know, was one, Accenture was one, and the end of the day, and Rising. End of the day, it came down to Accenture and Rising. But while we were evaluating our vendors, any questions we had, any queries we had, Rising responded much faster, with much more detail. And just the documentation and the standard was a very high standard that we felt this is the partner that we want going forward. We also have a very structured process at PSE when we evaluate vendors and we evaluate our software requirements. We have a matrix of scoring that we go through, and Rising topped the scoring for that selection. We also, during our evaluation, we felt that the communication and the way that we partnered was much easier than any of the other companies that we evaluated. So it made the choice was quite easy at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Paige, I think you had a question. I cut you off there for a second.
I did. No, and I love that time that you shared that you had a grading scale, because I think so many times there are so many things to consider when choosing a partner. And it's so important that not just the solution that you have to evaluate is right for you and your team, but that the partner to make that a successful implementation is just as imperative to make sure that all around that's being, leveraged by your team. So I'm happy to hear that went well with Rising. My question was actually around just, understanding the utilities industry, what are some trends? I would say, I see some things just in our line of work and understanding, hire to retire and these challenges of folks, kind of growing out of the business, but needing to really train and identify new talent. And I'm just curious, what were some of those trends in your industry that you were experiencing when you initially started to do the evaluation of SuccessFactors and of this HR solution?
Well, what I can say that maybe that comes back to one of the first questions you guys asked, was what was part of the reason that we chose SuccessFactor, and why did we want to leave the on-premise SAP? And one of it was the candidates. We had, it was a very robust process in SAP to get candidates and evaluate candidates. We had many drop-off of candidates that we missed on evaluations. So that caused quite a lot of friction within the HR environment. So we wanted something that's much more streamlined, much more self-service, much more interactive with our candidates for our recruiting and onboarding. Also be able to interface very easily with social media, LinkedIn, Facebook. So all those were contributing factors within choosing SuccessFactors.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I appreciate your perspective on that. Thank you. Yes. And just a reminder for those of you joining, feel free to jump in with any questions via the Q&A function, raise a hand, hop on camera, come off mute, whatever that looks like for you. I'll keep asking questions, but would love to hear from the audience as much as possible. This, again, is really your time to hear from customers who have lived it and experienced it. So my next question is really, I kind of want to start talking about the partnership between, do we have a question? Okay.
Yeah, so Stephanie, what I was going to say, Stephanie Lee put into the chat, she would just like to understand full of what was implemented at Puget Sound.
Okay, so
maybe, go ahead.
Yeah, let me go through the list. So we started off in early 2018 with Employee Central, ESS and MSS. We also did recruiting and onboarding, and we did the employee file management and case management and knowledge base. And what I mean with that is not really specific to SuccessFactors. We implemented a document management system to actually integrate with all these modules, and we chose PeopleDoc at that time. And then we went forward and we implemented goal setting, our merit and incentives of SuccessFactors, the performance management, and career development planning and succession, and then workforce analytics. Does that answer the question?
Yes, I believe so. Okay. Definitely let us know if there's anything else we can
that's
clarify for you.
What I can add also, we implemented Enable Now, the new SAP training solution to assist us with our training capabilities.
Okay, no, that's great. And sorry, is the rest of your payroll and time that's still on the on-premise solution?
Yeah, time and attendance, we left on our current HR on-premise, and also payroll. We just thought at that point it's just too big to take it all on. We will be implementing payroll in SuccessFactors in a couple of years' time.
Okay, thank you.
So
any other questions
to interface with payroll. So if anybody is interested to know.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for coming off mute. Keep it up. So my next question or topic really is around, the partnership. Based on, kind of the call that we had prior to this to just kind of learn more and prepare for today's discussion, it sounded like it was pretty smooth. There weren't a lot of hiccups. And I would love to hear kind of from both sides, from the partner side, from Rising, what is it that helps keep a project on time? I believe it takes both sides, right? So from an end customer, what allows you guys to have a successful project? And then, I'll switch to you, Chaim, to kind of say, from your perspective, what qualities does the partner have to also meet that? So Brenda, we'll start with you.
Sure. I think collaboration between our clients, their selected partners, and SAP is really, the first key and critical item. We always try to just make sure we have a really good governance structure that's established upfront and early in the project. One of the things that Puget Sound did also exceptionally well, one of many things, was that this project was identified as a strategic initiative within their overall corporate profile, also very early on in the project. So that meant that we had a steering committee that was very highly structured. It included both the CIO and CHRO or VP of HR at the time. And so that was great for Chime and I and the other, core project members, because we had, that backup of sponsors on their side that were able to, help clear roadblocks and provide direction and help cast that vision and remind the team, the importance of the work, and to show that there was that executive visibility for the work, for the really hard work that was being done on the ground. But then also Chime, though, that meant there was a lot of scrutiny, right? And so we were, as we would prep for every steering committee meeting, there was a lot of details and, planning that would go into that. So the partnership itself, of course, is critical. All the components that go into that, right? Communications, collaboration, trust. But yet, in this case, or I think for any project, really having that kind of wrapped up into a governance structure that makes the team feel like they're supported and able to deliver and keep up with their own commitments, but then also, gives that visibility. I just think is one of the most key items I could even mention.
Yeah, I would agree with Brenda. Our sponsors from a very high executive level were supporting our program, and we got all the support we needed from them. The other big thing that I do want to mention, it was also a lot of preparation before the program even started. We brought in SAP with Rising, and we all were around the table and made sure that everybody understood what their roles and responsibilities are and what needs to happen over the next 2 years. And I think getting that on paper very clear made the implementation much easier.
Yeah. And then, one of the other items, I was just thinking about it earlier today. Our project was probably 2 years long with some of this, early planning that Chime talked about. And then really 3 phases of work, because reporting went in after the other modules were implemented. So over, pre-planning and then 3 phases of work, we worked together for more than 2 years. And, Chime, there was a good amount of turnover as well within, even your internal resources. And so one of the things, that I think you all did really well, along with your sponsors, was making sure that people were freed up, although your resources were still doing project work plus their day job, working their regular, taking care of their regular responsibilities. You all were very, creative and proactive in trying to clear roadblocks to make sure your resources remained available, especially in some of those heaviest areas like technical integrations, making sure the SAP, the replication to SAP HCM was, developed and in place and running smoothly. And then also making personnel changes, right? As people maybe left the organization or were moved into different jobs and had to leave the project team. So, there was just a lot of, for you as project manager, Chime, I know there was a lot of ins and outs, related to such a large project team over a long period of time. Yeah.
I think one of the key things also is that we did part of our preparation was really when we designed or prepared the contract for our implementation. We spent quite an amount of time defining the scope in detail. So we brought Rising on board for, I think it was about 6 weeks, to actually walk us through every functionality within the modules that we're going to implement, so that we can really define exactly what's going to be the scope in our contract. One of the key points in our company is once we start implementation, we don't want to go back and forth. What is in the contract? What's not in the contract? We want to be everybody must be very clear on what's in the contract and what's the scope, so that once we start a program, there's no ambiguity around contractual activities. And that helped quite significantly. Maybe what I should add also in there, we broke our design and execute phase up in 2 separate contracts. we first did our design contract. And once our design contract was complete and we knew exactly what we wanted, we then built our execute contract and implementation, the rest of the program in it. So that made it much easier for us. So there was no real along the way that, okay, we're not going to implement this, or we don't know about this, we want this, we want that. It was very clear, stipulated to everyone. And we shared that with everyone on the program, from Rising Side and from PSE. So everybody knew what was in the contract.
Yeah, and this is Megan. I actually got to meet with Brenda and Chime prior to here, and that's one of the things that I found, from our conversation to be probably one of the main cornerstones for your successful project. Doing that scope, doing that exercise with the partner there, being, fully transparent with them, being over prepared. Like Chime, your methodology towards approaching projects with the over preparation, I think, is again how you found success with this. And I think you mentioned for your 2-year program, you only went through like 3 different service changes. I think that's really impressive, though. So again, working with the partner, and your methodology of over preparation, I feel like led towards success with this project. Absolutely. So congratulations, and thanks for sharing that with the group as well.
It takes many months of sitting down and headbutting, but you get it done. But once you're done with it, it goes quite smooth.
Yeah, I think, having been on that side with the contracts, that's a really interesting approach, because how many times do you lose time and attention to the actual project because you're going back and forth, and this is what I meant, and this is what I thought it meant, and having to have those tough conversations is really, really distracting from the project at hand. So I'm curious, we've talked about the importance of the partnership between Rising and Puget, but did you experience any challenges internally with, maybe from the adoption side, or getting the project across the line? Were there any internal struggles or change management? Obviously, it's a big buzzword. I'm curious kind of how you got the internal team on board to make it successful as well.
Well, it was very tough, actually, because the majority of our HR folks was doing still their day job and the implementation, and that can most probably be put down to a 2-year period. Why the project was 2 years is to really put some time in place so that we can have these guys doing their day job and be part of the implementation. One of the points that, it usually takes halfway through our meeting to get to this, but OCM change management played a key role in our program. We had a full team of 3 people that were actually managing our change management. And they did an incredible job because we got a huge amount of support also from our sponsors around change management. And once that flowed well, everything just went well. So change management is key. You must have a team in place for that. And not try to do it yourself.
Great. That's good advice. Stephanie, you raised your hand. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I actually had a couple questions. You mentioned that your implementation, you did Employee Central, and then you said ESS MSS as well. So I thought ESS MSS is on the SAP side on premise, and I'm trying to get my head around sort of how.
Meant more recruiting and onboarding.
Sorry.
Recruiting and onboarding.
Okay. Oh, recruiting and onboarding. Okay.
Yep. And Stephanie, maybe just to help with the terminology there. So Chime was probably thinking about it from a kind of scope perspective, where Employee Central, recruiting, onboarding, that replaced the existing employee self-service and manager self-service that was in SAP HCM. Yeah. If you're familiar with SAP.
Some of the abbreviations always stay in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
25 years in the industry, right, Chime?
Yep.
Okay.
But it's
And
And so Employee Central is the core HR module of SuccessFactors. And so that does allow employee self-service or manager self-service for things like employees updating their own personal address, or if they needed to update emergency contact information, that would be there. Managers could initiate a promotion or do a compensation change. So those are the types of functionalities that were in the first phase of work for PSE.
okay. Yeah, because I think for us, we're, we haven't signed a business case or anything for SuccessFactors, but we're kind of investigating it right now. And
Right.
we're an SAP shop as well. And so we're kind of looking at a hybrid model, but then trying to understand kind of what pieces should go. And we don't, we do see maybe a need to replace recruitment and potentially learning. But then we haven't really built a case or the justification for Employee Central, because everything seems to be working okay with the core. So just trying to understand kind of what other people have done with that and how they were able to move forward with that. The other question that I had was, you talked about Rising helping you with the implementation. So your on-premise team or your own team, were they doing part of the, the setup, or, in the traditional side of SAP side was the configuration? Was that done by Rising's team, or was that done by your in-house team with Rising support?
No, that was done by Rising team. The first initial configuration was done by Rising. And this is a very interesting fact. We, as you know, normally the IT department is the support area for all implementations, post-implementation in SAP. We made a decision in PSE to move that. The support function of SuccessFactors was moved to HR, to the business. So we took that totally away from IT, and it's getting supported by our HR business. So Rising did the initial configuration and then the training on that configuration for our in-house support team.
Okay,
and
so
Stephanie,
then
part of, sorry to interrupt, part of the reason that made sense for PSE is because SuccessFactors, first of all, is extremely user-friendly, right? Compared to traditional SAP on-premise, SuccessFactors has a very advanced administration center, admin center, with a very friendly user interface. And so even non-technical functional owners could do things like, or, for example, maybe onboarding, you might have a team, or recruiting, you might have a team that's managing the application, and they might just want to make a label change or update instructions, right? That's very easy to do through the user interface in SuccessFactors. But yet we might not want those same individuals having access to give security permissions that are for the whole system. So just that piece of security could be held back to a higher level, super user, or even IT. And so SuccessFactors is just very flexible to allow you to kind of segment roles and responsibilities in a way that would work for your organization.
Okay, so it sounds like more of it's gone to the business to support with a lot of things. And so, Chime, what pieces did your team hold back?
When you say hold back, what do you mean?
Like, is your team helping with security, or?
We've broken it up into sections. We've got our initial security, or the upper level of our security is managed by our internal security team within our company. So it's not HR. Then when it goes down to a certain second or third level, then HR takes that over, and they can manage security within their group or within their department. But not all security, due to our carbon oxy, is not all within HR. It's split into our internal security team and HR team.
Okay, so if there is sort of maybe a more technical config change that the business isn't managing, then it's your team then that's
No, the
handling it?
business does all the internal
Oh,
configuration of, you must understand with SuccessFactor, there's 40% of the configuration that cannot be done by the customer. It must be done by a certified partner. And then the others, I don't know exactly what it is, Brenna, but about 70% can be done by the HR department itself.
okay. And so for that 40%, you have a contract with Rising to help
Correct.
support
We
you
have
for
a
that.
contract with Rising, and it's actually not big. It's very small contract, very small amount of hours. The majority of the configuration stays within our HR department.
Okay.
And the HRAS team at Puget Sound Energy, I believe there's 5 on the team now, Chime.
Yep.
And they support this system plus the learning tool, which is not SuccessFactors at this time.
Okay.
And that covers all reporting, plus user, tier 1 user support, as well as configuration maintenance.
Yeah, I think
how many employees do you have? I'm just trying to understand the size.
Just over 3,000, 3,500.
Thank you.
Great question, Stephanie. Thanks.
Yes, thanks, Stephanie. So I think, Chime, kind of knowing where Stephanie is in her journey, I'd like to spend a little more time talking about the preparation side. So I know you attribute that to the success of the project. So I'm wondering if we can just kind of dive in a little deeper about what that looks like and how much before the actual project kickoff, how much time you dedicated to preparation to ensure the success, and kind of where Rising fit into the preparation conversations as well.
Yeah, the preparation within the HR department started around easily 2 years before we even connected with Rising. Then when Rising was selected, I would say we did about 2 months to 3 months of in-depth preparation together before we actually implemented. So it was not a situation where the normal SAP implementations, you'll maybe have a couple of weeks. This was totally different. We spent quite a significant amount of time in the preparation with Rising.
Yeah, in this case, I think PSE and Rising, we probably spent a full quarter just going through project prep, aligning a roadmap, deciding on some of the high level components of the project. So setting up the initial plan and the program. And then we moved into about 3 to 4 months of process design work for phase 1. And so this was just looking at core HR transactions, what the future state business process would look like, as well as for recruiting and onboarding. And so after we had documented the future state, really around the specifics of how SuccessFactors would enable PSE and your stakeholders to perform these operations, then we moved into design. Well, actually, even before we moved into design time, we kind of went through that long scope.
Correct.
We were running design for Employee Central recruiting and onboarding at the same time we were confirming scope for the second phase, right? So we had a couple of multiple work streams in the summer of 2018. And then the implementation itself probably kicked off for Employee Central in even August or September of 2018. And then the go live was in June of the next year, June of 2019.
And maybe you guys will have a question, but also why you did this is we wanted a fixed price for our contract. So we didn't want the time and materials because that can so easily escalate out of control. We wanted a fixed price on this and stay with that amount cost that was estimated from the start.
That's great. And then I think, go ahead, Brenda.
Oh, no, I was just, and on the topic of, change requests and making sure we knew what the project scope was and everything. When Chime and I connected earlier today, we were both kind of reminiscing about, how often we were on the phone together, through the project. And there was always a sense that we would deal with things immediately, right? If the project team started chattering in the background, he'd call and check in with me and our project manager on, hey, what's happening? It seems like there's a little bit of unrest, or, something's happening here, let's dive into it. And so, Chime, I would say we were rarely ever at the point that there was an escalation, but there were a lot of early conversations, right?
Sure.
Kind of, making sure the team was still headed in the right direction.
Yeah, one of the sort of policies we had was any escalation or issues or risks, we actually attempted to resolve within our program PMO level. So very minimal would go up to steering committee level, if any that I can think of. I don't think there was any that went up to steering committee level. We would resolve it. What I also need to mention on here that you keep forgetting also, and I spoke to you about it earlier, Brenda, we also had an ambassador from SAP as part of our program. That it was a senior executive from SAP, and anything around the product that we ran into any issues, the ambassador from SAP was the first one to be contacted, and I had a direct line to him. And that made it also, and then we would get responses within the hours from SAP.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it's easy to forget, you want to talk about the partner and the customer, but, SAP has, their job's not done once the software is sold. And so really it is this triangle of communication and vested interest to make sure that it's successful. And as, the end customer, I think it's important to, figure out, am I having a software issue, or am I having, an implementation issue, or am I having a internal issue from adoption, or whatever that case may be? And really, not, it sounds like you guys did a great job of not placing blame, but really trying to figure out where the source of the problem is and address it quickly, and not allowing it to escalate to the steering committee level. So I commend you guys for being on the same page with that. I think that can be sometimes unique that you guys had that communication.
Maybe something.
Yeah, and Lauren,
we added another service that's called Max Attention, that after every phase that we completed, we brought Max Attention in for about, I would say about 10 days, sometimes 10 days, sometimes just 5 business days. And they would review the phase that was implemented and make sure that everything was done accordingly.
That's great. And I was just going to echo Lauren's sentiments as well. I think communication and engaging the right stakeholders, from your team Time, and then Brenda, your team, and then the SAP team, and really being able to be proactive, understanding, what were your team's objectives and being able to meet that, and especially to looking at it from that phased approach, I think certainly helps with a smooth project and a smooth implementation. And so I think you guys did a great job with that. So just wanted to commend you on job well done.
Thanks, Paige.
Going
back to maybe one of Stephanie's earlier questions or comments, the phasing is so variable among so many of our customers. And so we do have a lot of customers who's especially in the utility space, or any regulated industry, maybe learning is a key pain point, right? Because training and compliance, and that's so critical for your annual reporting, that, that's the main pain point. And so, with the type of early planning we've been talking about with PSE, we're really able to help clients evaluate what is the right roadmap for them. And Puget Sound, Chaim and his team, they actually went directly from phase 1 into phase 2 with like almost zero break, right? By the time we finished the Employee Central recruiting and onboarding go live, we had maybe 2 weeks to breathe while those systems were stabilizing, or 4 weeks, and then we moved right into the design phase for talent management. And so, but that's not really typical. Some clients implement one module and then a full year later implement a second module. And so there's really even no requirement that the core HR system be implemented first, Stephanie, right? It's there are the most, I think the most, there's the most return on investment, potentially with implementing core HR for transactions, recruiting and onboarding first, which is what PSE decided to take advantage of. But that's not a hard and fast at all with the technology. There's a lot of ways to tackle it.
I think just conceptually, it always seems to make more sense to do the base, right? Which I would see as Employee Central. And then once you do that, then add on, the pieces that you want to. And I understand, that is one of the benefits of SuccessFactors, that you can, like you said, do learning first or recruitment, and then go and readdress Employee Central later. But just from an efficiency standpoint and just from a logical one, you think that, if the roadmap is saying that SuccessFactors is SAP's direction, then, why delay Employee Central if it's inevitable, right? So
right.
Actually, Chaim, I did have another question. You also mentioned that one of your drivers was to moving to SuccessFactors was the reporting, but I was under the impression that reporting was a little thin on SuccessFactors side. Is that not?
No,
that's not what you've seen?
No, that's definitely not what I've seen. It's
Okay.
not thin. With the Workday analytics tools, there's the people analytics tools that's now been released. I think it's incredible. The reporting is just out of this world. It's very good.
Okay.
We get everything we need out of our reporting, but you must spend quite an amount of time learning and knowing it very well. We've got a dedicated person on reporting, and we get all the reporting we want, much more than what we used to get.
Okay, and is that standard out of the box, or was that sort of another tool that you had to implement?
Some of them are standard, but some of them you have to do a bit of, building and configuration, and depending on what you want to pull out of the system.
Okay.
But there's already, it works somewhat similar. There's different packages within the reporting that you can take. And once you go through your preparation of your contract, you will then review all those packages and then decide what's the best for your company.
Okay. Did you know that ahead of time? I know you were saying you did a lot of planning, or did that come out later on?
No, we knew that ahead of time.
You knew that ahead of time.
The only thing of a concern was the people analytics module was still on the roadmap and not yet released. And I think, Brenda, it was released middle last year sometime.
Yeah, there's been a major enhancement in the embedded analytics within the SuccessFactors module called People Analytics now. And so that was, out in 2020. Chaim and the PSE team did implement Workforce Analytics, which is another module that allows some additional analytics and trend analysis of your data. And so that, and that's where there are additional metric packs for each of the functional areas of HR.
What I can add also, Stephanie, I'm now currently on a program busy with data analytics, and we're now looking at Power BI interface to the analytics tool in SuccessFactors.
Okay, yeah, I had heard that we would need to do something like that with Power BI. So yeah, sorry, just back to your original implementation. How big was the team, like your staff and then Rising staff?
Our team was, I would say, plus minus 25 to 30 internal resources. Brenda, your team was about, or also about that amount, I think.
Yeah, I would have guessed right at 30. But that was over, multiple phases. Our last phase where we were implementing the metrics packs for analytics, we were down to maybe 3 team members, right?
Mhm.
So.
But at the peak times, we were around, I would say about 60 to 70 people.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay,
through the first phase of work, which was the most heavy, we were probably, each 20 team members even.
Mm.
During that time, because most of the technical integration work was with related to core HR.
Correct.
And was that where the bulk of the work was with the integration?
That was the most complex, was the integration. Replication of your payroll, that's a very tough one. Yeah, if you do not take payroll and you're going to interface to your on-premise payroll system, you have to take a lot of time and dedication to that. That's really the real technical tough one.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen recent resumes on payroll side and lots of people having payroll / SuccessFactors Employee Central experience.
I don't know so much about that.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
that's an area that we found experience out there in consulting are very limited.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was quite a big project then. I mean,
It was quite a big project.
Mhm.
Yes. And, one of the things we were considering what you mentioned earlier about keeping Employee Central still in the on-premise SAP and then maybe just recruiting and onboarding separate. But then you have to interface back to the on-premise SAP HR environment. And with that and the payroll interface, we found that's going to just be a challenge too many. So we streamlined that by just taking our Employee Central in SuccessFactors, take everything out of SAP and just keep the payroll on time and attendance in SAP.
Okay. And the business was okay with that?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
This is basically, I can mention a business, part of the business decided that. It's not my decision. I gave them the options and they decided what to do.
Those are usually the most successful projects, right? When they made that decision and they're part of it. So.
Yep. Then they dedicated to it.
Mm-hmm.
We have about 5 minutes left. And thank you, Stephanie, for all the great questions. I really appreciate the interaction. My last question to kind of wrap up for you, Chime, would be, having gone through all of these different phases and being on the other side of successful go lives, and it sounds like it was a pretty smooth project, thanks to a lot of your preparation and great partnership with Rising. But what advice would you give to yourself knowing what you know now? Is there anything that you would have done differently that maybe someone like Stephanie can take with her as she's about to, sounds like she's about to embark on this journey herself?
No, there's not much advice that I would give myself really, because at the end of the day, when I look at it and I say, what is the lessons I learned? There's many lessons I learned, but it's mostly around, I would say, program governance, small little points within the program, but anything that's of a large impact, we had none. I would say for anyone that wants to do this, make sure you utilize all the resources and services that's provided from SAP or any vendor that you're going to work with, or any, depending on the vendor that you're going to do the implementation or the software you're going to choose, utilize. There's so much information available but you must use the services that's out there and do the preparation. Even if you spend a couple of months really in depth with your vendor before the implementation, it's worth the fun, the cost. And break.
Awesome. And Brenda,
My personal opinion is, do not try to implement too much in one continuous process. Break it up.
Good advice. And Brenda, same for you. Obviously, you've worked with a lot of end customers. You've seen a lot of projects. You know, what advice do you give to folks as you're, you know, first engaging and kicking off projects?
Yeah, so kind of keeping in the theme of what we've talked about, I think the early planning is really critical. So setting up your governance structure, understanding your organization's key objectives, what are the sponsors behind, and what are we driving towards? You know, deciding that early, I think, is critical, because having a roadmap that's realistic for your organization and gives you the type of executive support that you're going to need for this type of project. You know, if you are thinking about a full rollout of SuccessFactors, even though you know it might be over time, you really want to make sure you have that high level support and engagement. And so, you know, understanding, you know, the key pain points, again, business objectives, and then being able to cultivate or create your roadmap to really tackle those key pain points. And that's, you know, how you're going to create the best user adoption for a new system out of the gate, you know, regardless of which solution you're using or which vendor you're working with. So keep your ducks in a row internally.
Brenda, you just reminded me of something. Also make sure internally that your infrastructure team is involved in your preparation. It's critical, especially if you're going to go on the cloud, because there's some, there could be some stumbling blocks around the cloud technology. And if your infrastructure team is not involved from the start, that can delay activities. Also your security, internal security, especially nowadays with the security activities that's going on all across. So just make sure, bring everybody on board that you could think in your preparation, so they're fully aware of what's coming.
Great. And I know we're at time, but I just have one burning question for you, Chime. You know, I think when we talk about the project, and from the very beginning of how you got started, and then selecting your partner, and then, you know, actually going through and road mapping the process itself, you know, every company embarks on that for several reasons. You embark on it to be innovative, and you embark on it to you know, stay ahead of the competition, and you also embark on it because in theory it should make your day-to-day easier and your team's day-to-day easier. So I'd love to know just, you know, one or two key takeaways of how leveraging, you know, this product and solution has helped make either your day or your team's days just a bit easier and more efficient.
Well, that's actually very easy. You know, in the past, in the HR module, there was many times, unless you developed some sort of product to be able to see what my time and attendance, with what my PTO is, what my salary payslip, without a printed payslip, everything is now basically at a fingertip, and it feels exactly the same. As I always used to tell our employees when we spoke about the complexity of SuccessFactors, I would say it's the same thing when you go into your bank account. How easy is it for us to go into our bank account app and browse around in your bank account and get to certain points? It's the same thing with SuccessFactors. The ease of use is exactly the same. Anybody that's been with SAP shop for many years know it can be at times very complex, especially around training for end users. This is just, and any end user today is on apps on their phone, so they know exactly how to easily browse through it. It's the ease.
That's awesome, and I really love that bank analogy. Very good real life example, and makes sense, really hits home. So thank you.
It's everything at your fingertips that you didn't have in the past in HR.
Right. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. I will turn it back to Megan to wrap up today's session. But it's been a great chat, so thank you both.
You're welcome. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right, so I forgot to share my slide here. I just wanted to highlight some of the upcoming sessions that we have as well. We have another SuccessFactors session coming up here. Let me share my screen here. Awesome. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
So today, you know, we just talked to Puget Sound Energy, and then we also have Mod Pizza, another SuccessFactors session for those who are interested again in SuccessFactors. We have Mohawk Industries, which is one of the largest manufacturers of flooring in the world, with their supply chain session on June 23rd. iMart Group, we're talking about their S4HANA transformation on June 29th. And then another supply chain session with Treehouse Food, specifically around SAP IBP, and that is on Wednesday, June 30th. We will also have another couple of events here soon, New York Power Authority, Neon Coden, and FIFCO as well. So we'll go ahead and send out some additional information about the events as they come up, but just FYI, we've got a very robust list of customers. So, you know, if you enjoyed listening to today, then we'll have other customers as well. Awesome. All right. So I also wanted to say, you know, thank you for time, and thank you, Brenda, for your time today as well. And thank you for the end customers on the call and all the other attendees. Thank you for a lively discussion.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
So
guys.
I have one. Sorry, somebody just joined my household. So we will be giving away that assessment from Rising. So basically, it's a value assessment. I think Brenda talked a little bit about it as well during our session today, a mini health check, if you will. So we will be giving it to an end customer today, just to, again, understand the organization's goals and hopefully help clarify that path towards some of those end goals from Rising. So I wanted to announce that the winner of that is Maryland General Assembly. I believe it's Edward as well as the customer. So I'll go ahead and follow up with him after this event. So thank you again to all of our panelists and attendees, and I'll go ahead and follow up with the appropriate parties.
Thanks, everyone, and congrats, Edward. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. Appreciate all your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.